Hey everybody, Egnards here. It is Saturday morning. We have another Conquest coming up on Monday. We received notice last week that Luthen is going to be our next Conquest character, who I don't think was really on anybody's radar as coming up in the very near future, especially with Andor Season 2 a little bit further down the road. And don't worry, we're not here to do a kit reveal or anything like that. We're really just here to talk about how we can red crate it, how I'm going to red crate it as a veteran account, and what we can do if we're a little bit lower in the GP range to make up some of those burritos that maybe you weren't able to get in the past. Now, I am going to be honest with you. I spent a couple of days putting down my plan, looking at other options for other people, and I threw together what I thought was, for me at least, a pretty nice Google sheet, right? Lots of colors, kind of cute, at least for me. And we've got Moonborn on our Discord, who's a good friend of mine, and I don't know if he wants to call himself a content creator at this point, but he does a lot of infographics and really anything that makes my videos look pretty. It's probably because of him. And after I threw this together and I asked him to critique it, he put together a couple of infographics that are way, way, way prettier. So I want to give a shout out to him for doing that, and we are going to use those, but I wanted to just show this off so that when we can really appreciate the difference. Okay. Now, before we actually get into the Conquest, we don't know which data discs we're going to be getting this set, right? Last time we had a more defensive oriented disc set. Previously, for about a year, we had a more offense-oriented disc set, and typically Meathead does release the exact discs that we will be using, but we have heard nothing yet. So it's really hard for us to talk about exact options, but I will be honest, as long as the discs that I typically use in either set are available, I should be good with my strategy. It may change up your strategy depending on the tools that you have. So just to kind of give you an idea, if we get a more offensive disc set, I believe that Voluntary Vanguard is my non-negotiable disc. I'm going to try to get as many Amplify Agonies on top of that as possible, as well as a Ruthless Swiftness. Anything beyond that, I might throw in just a random defensive disc, something with protection recovery. I might pick up the thermals disc just in case I do need to bomb something down the line. But that is what I'm looking to get as my most important discs. And it can be hard to get 3 Amplify Agony, but I'm always hoping and praying it usually pans out by Sector 5. Now, if we keep the data discs like we had this last set, which is very, very possible, I look for a Voluntary Vanguard, a Zealous Ambition, a Leader's Resolve, and at least one Entrenched. Voluntary Vanguard, again, is my most important disc because it allows me to cheese things without needing to take up an extra slot by Watt, right? JML and Watt, I'm always going to have that tank tech, and I'm always going to have a taunt, but I prefer to be able to use that slot by another Jedi or by another cheese character. So anytime I can have a Voluntary Vanguard, I am super happy. There is one important change to this Conquest before I get into these beautiful infographics, in that we are seeing a reduction in the number of teams and a reduction in the number of kills that players need to do in order to complete. So something might be going on at CG headquarters where with the last Conquest, everybody noticed was a little bit easier. And them realizing that maybe more people were putting money into it and that it's worth it to reduce difficulty. So as an example, normally our win with faction feats have 14 wins. Now they're down to 10. Normally we have a win 40 battles or 2 win 40 battles feats. In the globals feats, we're seeing 15s instead of 40s. Normally we have 20s as well. Okay, so there's usually 2 40s and 2 20s. We're not seeing that at all. And our kill feats drop down from 50 to 35. Overall, I think it's going to be a good change as long as the difficulty remains relatively the same. So, with all of that said, let's get into it. So you can see, graphically, much prettier. We want to talk about up top are going to be the teams that I'm using, right? They might not necessarily be the best option for everybody. I'm going to be looking to cheese things a little bit harder just to get it over with. But the important thing that we need to talk about as players is that it's not necessarily important to beat Conquest in as few battles as possible. And that seems to be a hang-up that a lot of people have. What is important is that we spend the majority of our time working on Datacron nodes, right? So if it takes me 100 battles to get to Datacron nodes, and it takes you 100 battles to complete the Conquest overall, it's effectively the same thing in terms of efficiency, as long as the cheesing or as long as the grinding that I'm doing after those 100 battles are all on productive nodes that are going to allow me to get Datacrons or Datacron materials, right? So with that in mind, I'm not necessarily looking to finish all of my feats before I get past the boss node. I am looking to finish up the ones that are going to be hardest to do, and I am looking to finish up the ones that are going to require me to use characters in later sectors. Alright, so let's start with the global feats. We have defeat 250 enemies on the challenge path. That's pretty typical, and it's not that hard to do as long as you stay the path on those challenge paths. Win 15 battles with Captain Rex, who is about a year old at this point, so it's really not that big of a deal. Defeat 35 enemies with Jedi Knight Cal Kestis. Again, Jedi Knight Cal Kestis is about a year old, so it was kind of, hey, when is this going to happen? As opposed to, is this going to happen? Win 15 battles with Master Qui-Gon and Padawan Obi-Wan surviving. Now that one is going to be a little bit tougher for a lot of people because those are newer characters and most of us have them at G11 or below at 3 or 4 stars. That does include me. And then we're going to get into our tied feats, all right? So the feats that require us to do something for one burrito in order to unlock something else that is usually easy to do that's going to give us a 15 more. So we have win 15 battles with at least 4 Gungans, and CG's being relatively nice here because those Gungans don't need to survive, right? And it's not a full team, so you can throw them behind JML, or you can throw them behind Rey or LV, or literally whoever you want to, and you don't even need a 3-star win because as long as it's on a Datacron node, it doesn't matter. And it's not going to affect you. We're also going to get defeat 35 enemies with Dark Trooper Moff Gideon. Dark Trooper Moff Gideon, great Conquest character. We got him, I think it was, I want to say 6 to 9 months ago, somewhere in that range. The problem here, though, is that he is a support and he doesn't do a lot of damage. So even though I do have him, he is only at G12. I haven't invested in the team. If I choose to do this feat, I'm probably going to cheese it. All right, and then the 2 linked feats there for the Gungans. We have complete a battle with Overprepared 1, which is just a consumable. It's a super quick gear check for those Gungans. And attempt to call assist with Booming Voice 60 times after you do the DTMG feat, which is one of the easier feats to accomplish because it's just going to call massive assists from your leader pretty much all of the time. We're going to try to do as much of this stuff as we can throughout the sectors, but nothing there do I think is uncheesable, and we're not going to worry too terribly much about that. So let's get into our sector feats. Sector 1, we have defeat 35 enemies with light side Mandos, gain evasion up 50 times, defeat 35 enemies with Ewoks, and win 10 battles with a full squad of resistance. Full squad of resistance, not necessarily that bad. We did get the Rey Lightspeed bundles twice, so it is a team that a lot of people have now. Defeat 35 battles, 35 enemies with Ewoks. Not the greatest team in the world. I'm going to cheese it. Because we did just get Leia a year ago, there are a lot of people that do have Relic Ewoks. It is going to make it a little bit easier for them to survive in your cheese teams. Gain evasion up 50 times. We have plenty of ways to do that. And defeat 35 enemies with light side Mandos. We also have a lot of We also have a lot of options there. I don't have Bo-Katan Mandalore yet. I am planning to unlock her on Monday, so I could feasibly use her here in a full Lightspeed Mandals team. I honestly think I'm just going to cheese it to make it easier. So let's look at what I'm going to do up top, and then a few other options that I've isolated that might be easier for some people. For my resistance wins, I have my Rey team, and I'm specifically pulling Hero Finn out of that team just so that I have a secondary team and I can try to get this done as soon as possible. So I have my Rey team, which is just basic resistance. Do not throw Ben in there. He is not resistance, right? I wish. It would be great. And then I have my Finn, Zori, Hero Finn, Rose, and Vet Han team, which should put in some work early on as well. That's only going to get me that one feat. For my Ewok and LS Mando wins, I'm going to throw Jedi Master Luke behind Jolee just for that revive, Luminara, Jedi Knight Luke, and then that fifth slot is going to be pulled up probably by Bo-Katan. It could be Beskar Mando, it could be Paz Vizsla. It honestly doesn't matter because most of the damage is going to be coming from Jedi Master Luke's granted special anyway. Or one of my Ewoks. I think I have a Relic 7 Elder because of ROTE platoons, so I'm probably going to use him just in the interest of survivability, just in case I come across teams that have AoEs. Now Luminara is in there because she does evasion up on basic, so during the beginning of the battle I'm going to be calling her a lot to try to build up those numbers as much as possible. And Jedi Knight Luke is in there for his masked stun, which is going to make your life a lot easier, especially against things that have overprepared or a lot of TM. I do have my Jedi Master Kenobi team with Kat, General Kenobi, and I'm going to throw those two new Jedi in there, right? Master Qui-Gon and Padawan Obi-Wan. Kat's going to give me some evasion up, not a ton of it, but it's still workable. But in the early sector, I'm going to see if I can rack up 3, 4, maybe even 5 wins, brute forcing this and trying to get Master Qui-Gon and Padawan Obi-Wan to survive. A few options that might be a little bit easier for you depending on what you've prioritized. I put Bo-Katan down here and her team simply because, believe it or not, doing roster reviews constantly, I do see people that prioritized her, even though they're in the 5 to 7 million range. I don't pretend to know why, but it's happened. I see it. Her event comes around every month. It is very possible at this point that option is there. You can also do a Beskar Mando team with Han, Chewie, and 2 more Lightspeed Mandos. Beskar Mando should be doing the majority of your battle, your kills with Whistling Birds. We do want to be careful of Han, Chewie doing too much damage, so we're not going to throw this one on auto if we use it. But the good news is that Han is also going to give us evasion up, so that will help you if you don't have other options. And then Bad Batch. In the past, this is not something that I consider throwing up here, but since Marauder, a lot of people have been farming them to have a counter meta Leviathan fleet, not necessarily because of the Lord Vader requirements. So if you have Bad Batch, evasion up kind of runs through the entire team. Even if they're lower gear, right, you can possibly, as long as you can get a turn or 2 in, doesn't matter if you win, get those evasion ups, get out, whatever works, right? I don't think the sector is going to be that big of a deal. Sector 2, we have defeat 35 enemies with Rebel fighters, inflict potency down 50 times, defeat 35 enemies with Imperial troopers, and win 10 battles with a full squad of Night Sisters. Now, I do have a really nice Night Sister squad at Relic 8, so I'm going to throw in my traditional Night Sisters squad with Merrin. If I get that Zealous Ambition early, it's going to be easy wins that I can throw on auto. I will tell you that you can do this without Merrin if you get a Zealous Ambition. Even if your Night Sisters are not that great, even if you just happen to have the Night Sisters Lightspeed bundle that just came out and haven't really invested in them, there are no attackers in this team. So if you get Zealous Ambition, they are going to put in a ton of damage, even if they're on the lower end. I used to do these Night Sister feats with G12, like Relic 1-2 Night Sisters back in the day. It shouldn't be terribly hard. I am going to put in a Leia squad that mostly works with Rebel fighters, right? So Leia, Captain Rex, Drogon, any other Rebel fighter. And then you notice I have R2 and GMY. R2 obviously has the synergy. I can use him for his stealth. I can use him to try and not do a ton of damage as long as I only have the one Zealous Ambition. But I am going to see if I can get Grandmaster Yoda in there, not because of the synergy, but just because he has potency down on his basic. Leia also has potency down, but it's on a cooldown ability that's not going to provide us with a lot. So I want to see how many I can get. I might find like a Phoenix team and auto basic with Grandmaster Yoda. Because of General Kenobi, I have him at high level anyway, so he should be able to survive even with no synergy. This should get me my Rebel fighter kills. It should also get me some of the Captain Rex Survive Global feat that I'm going to be itching for, and that I'll work on a little bit later on as well. For my Imperial Troopers, it's not personally a team that I've put a lot of effort into over time, but I do have a Veer Stark Piet Dark Trooper Range Trooper team that I expect to put in some work for me. If I get that early leader's resolve, Piet should be fast enough to outspeed most teams. So I'm going to look for something maybe a little bit on the easier side. I do like to have a Bad Batch node because they don't typically have over-prepared. And that gives me something that has... that's a little bit slower to put kills in on. You can also do a tray of cheese. It gets something like Geo teams or Mon Mothma teams, throwing in Traya and Malik, having that voluntary vanguard, letting everything assist constantly, and then racking it up with like a Piet AoE, or really any AoE. I think it's Veer's, it might be Stark that also has an AoE. Some other options that you might want to consider. A Mon Mothma team should still do pretty well in Sector 2. An Ad-Red team should do pretty well in Sector 2, especially against something like Imperial Troopers, to get those Rebel fighter kills. If you don't have a Leia team available to you, you can obviously use a Jedi Master Luke Cheese. I'm trying to avoid it because I'm going to need it in further sectors as well. I have a JMK team here with GMY, those two new Jedis, and Cat. Just like in Sector 1, I'm going to try to just put in a couple of battles to build up the counter there. The nice thing with the JMK team and GMY is that there are a few more assists here, so Grandmaster Yoda will get a few more opportunities to also apply potency down. And even if you don't have any of those options, even if you are completely pre-GL, a traditional Revan-led team with GMY, General Kenobi, Bastilla Shan, and Jolie Bindo will be able to get you those potency downs relatively quick because you have 2 mass calls and you have 2 assists on that team. And it is a relatively strong pre-GL team. Whew. Going into Sector 3, we have defeat 35 enemies with any Han, win 10 battles with a full squad of Separatists, gain accuracy up 50 times, and gain We Adapt or Die 50 times. We Adapt or Die is a pain in the ass feat because only one character has it, but the good news is that she doesn't have to survive, and she does mass apply it to Imperial Trooper allies, so it shouldn't be that big of a deal. You'll see that on this infographic, we've actually added something extra which says do this early, and the reason that it says do this early is because this is a team that I'm gonna want to use in the next sector as well, and isn't necessarily the biggest priority. So if I can get these wins in super early, I will still have the team available to me the next day, right? For my Separatist wins, I'm personally going to rely heavily on a General Grievous squad. I'm going to try to get at least 4 or 5 of those done in the first day and maybe come back to them later. My trench is only G12. I've put it in my efficiency pick simply because the rest of my team is fairly highly relicked, and I'm wondering if I'll be able to get by regardless. I might try it once or twice. I have a full Gungan team. That was my bread and butter. That was my thing. So I'm going to just throw in a full Gungan team for my accuracy up. Fouling supplies it. It is not something that I expect to get a lot of here, but I also want to start racking up my Gungan wins. So I'm going to throw that in, see what happens. For my kills with any Han, I'm going to try to throw in a Jedi Master Luke team with Seer, who is not a Jedi, Vet Han, Jedi Knight Luke, and Revan. Seer is going to apply her accuracy up pretty liberally with her specials, so that's going to help build that up. And I'm going to use Vet Han as opposed to one of my other Hans, because he is relict, as opposed to like my Stormtrooper Han, and I'm not going to need him in further sectors, right? So we're going to see if that works. I don't think I'm going to have any problems there. And my Iden squad, I am a little bit nervous about this. I usually can get this without too much problems because my Iden is like Relic 2, Relic 3. The rest of the team, not that great. But the good news is that she does not have to survive. Again, I'm probably going to look for something like a Bad Batch squad that does not have over-prepared so that I can see if I can get that early turn in, get my 5 in, and be done. If I find a Bounty Hunter node that's maybe Bosk-led and not Jango-led, I might try it there as well, and I might try to slow down the battle to see if I can get 10 to 15 in a battle instead of having to do this 5 at a time. Some other options that might work for you. I know that the Seer Ufu team is solid. I know that the Seer Ufu team is very popular with people. It's not something that I've fully invested in, but between Seer and Baby Cal, you should get plenty of accuracy up. If you have a Mon Mothma team and you have Scarif Rebel Pathfinder, he's going to apply this on basic, and because the Mon Mothma team mass assists on every attack, you should be able to get this relatively quickly with that. And while I do not have a lot of faith in using a Geo team here to get Separatist wins, if you're one of those crazy nutheads that has them high relics, it's something that might be worth trying. Again, probably against a team like Bad Batch, just because they do not have over-prepared. Going into Sector 4, we have win 10 battles with stop, gain shield up 50 times, inflict accuracy down 50 times, and win 10 battles with a full squad of rebels. Now, shield up is a new buff that only Phalanx has. We did just finish bonus drop, so I know that a lot of people are starting to consider their Gungans, even if they don't have Jar Jar. I personally do. I'm going to throw in the whole team, get my shield up, as well as my Gungan wins. Because you only need 4 Gungans in order to get the global feat for the Gungan wins, you can throw them behind something like JML or even Rey to try and get as many of these shields up as possible and to get your Gungan wins. I think it might be prudent to try just throwing in a 4-man squad with Boss Nass lead, because then you will get the shield generator, and that might allow you to stall a battle or two to get as many shield up as possible. Rey, again, is a really nice option here as well, because she is going to apply damage immunity if you need it, and she has always been one of the better units for stalling buff and debuff squads. I'm going to throw on my Leia squad here, but I'm really only worried about Captain Rex being in the team right now. I don't need to worry about what else is there, so I'll throw in Drogon, R2-D2, and whatever random rebel as well to get my rebel wins and Captain Rex wins. I'm probably also going to throw in just a traditional CLS squad, because that puts in a lot of work in Conquest, and I'm using my Leia squad pretty liberally, and I'm going to need some stamina generation. As somebody that does have Third Sister, I'm going to do a Third Sister-led team with Inquisitors. Eighth Brother and Seventh Sister both apply accuracy down. I think Seventh Sister does it on her basic. Because of all of the assists that'll happen, this should finish up relatively quickly. And then I'm going to see if I can do the stop survival with a traditional Grievous team. My stop is at R0, so maybe this will work. We'll try it. We'll see what happens. Maybe against something like Night Sisters, which I've found I typically in the past have been able to beat with the General Grievous team in Conquest. If you don't have those options, a Grand Inquisitor-led Inquisitor team is going to work as well, because you're still going to get those assist calls. And if you're really, really, really desperate, you could try just a Fifth Brother lead. You could honestly try even a Palp lead, but that's going to be a little bit slower for accuracy down, because you're not going to get as many assists going on. If your stop is not as high as mine, just throw him behind something. Lord Vader and some tanks, right? You can throw him behind Sith Empire. You could throw him behind Jedi Master Luke if you're completely honest with yourself. And you could throw him behind Kenobi as well. The key thing is you're going to want to throw him behind teams that have a lot of damage, or teams that have tanks against teams that have no AoE. This shouldn't be too terribly hard of a feat to accomplish, especially if you're throwing this behind something that doesn't have a lot of AoE, such as the Phoenix teams that don't have Sabine, and sometimes some of the Bounty Hunter teams only have a Boba, and knocking out that his Bounty Hunter's resolve super early can make that a possibility. So it's just something to keep in mind. And finally, going into Sector 5, right, we have inflict evasion down 50 times, defeat 35 enemies with Phoenix, win 10 battles with Master Qui-Gon, and it looks like we still didn't fix it, and that's okay. The feat is actually win 10 battles with Master Qui-Gon and Qui-Gon Jinn surviving, which I see was fixed and corrected over here in the infographic. We can all point and laugh at Moonborn later for that. I don't care, not a big deal. And defeat 35 enemies with Bounty Hunters. Now, I'm going to see if this works. I'm not necessarily convinced, but I'm going to try Jedi Master Luke with both Qui-Gons, Padawan Obi-Wan, and Jedi Knight Luke. There might be not enough damage on this team, but my Qui-Gon is R3, and Jedi Knight Luke's mass stun, and all of my damage being behind Jedi Master Luke's granted ability, this might work in my favor against some of the lesser Conquest teams to get my Master Qui-Gon and Qui-Gon survival, as well as my Master Qui-Gon and POW survival. If I find that easy enough, I might get a little bit daring and pull out Jedi Knight Luke to put in Old Ben. And the reason that I would do that is because Old Ben has evasion down. Again, this is a little riskier, but I'm going to try those risky things this first Conquest in the cycle just to see if it's going to work for me in the second one and in the third one. For my Bounty Hunters team, I'm going to just put together with Jabba, Kursatan, Halloween Leia. I'm going to throw Zam Wessel in there, even though she's not Hut Cartel. And I'm going to throw in probably Boba Fett. I'm going to keep Skiff out of this because he is not a bounty hunter, and I don't want him getting kills. That's going to get my bounty hunter kills, as well as evasion down from Zam, which is applied as an AoE, and from Kursatan, but only when he has Taunt. I'm not going to necessarily rely on Kursatan because I have mine relatively slow, so he's not going to get a lot of turns. Because my because my Phoenix are all Relic 7, they're not great modded. I'm going to try to get my Phoenix kills and my Captain Rex survival kills with a full Phoenix team. If it doesn't work, then I'm just going to throw them behind Jedi Master Luke, and I'll do that after I finish the sector. It's really not that big a deal. Remember, the whole idea here is not necessarily to finish the sector having gotten everything as quickly as possible. It's to finish the sector and do the rest of what needs to be done on a Datacron node. Some other options, you might try a Leia team for your Captain Rex and your evasion down, right? If you throw Old Ben on that team, you're not going to get a ton of Phoenix kills because you don't have a ton of assist calls, but Captain Rex will put in some work, especially if you have Zealous Ambition, because he is a support. You can try your traditional CLS squad. We'll give you evasion down with Chupio, who applies it on basic, which means he's going to be assisting constantly and applying that pretty liberally. You can also throw in Rey with Holdo and Baby Cal, and really any two other characters. You could do Chupio if you wanted to get a little bit frisky here and get everything all done at once. because Baby Cal and Holdo are both going to apply evasion down. Now, there are two things that I have not talked about at all, and that is Jedi Knight Cal Kestis kills and DTMG kills. And the reason why comes back to that same idea of these are things that I can do later on literally any Datacron sector node. Probably it's sector 3 or 4 just because that's where I spend most of my time farming. If you have Jedi Knight Cal Kestis, you reasonably have very good Jedi. You should probably have Jedi Master Luke, and even if you don't have him, you will have Jedi options available to you. That should not be a concern. DTMG is a little bit more of a concern because even if you do have his team fully fleshed out, it doesn't do a ton of damage. I don't know how much damage he's going to do even with Zealous Ambition because I only have him at G12. If I choose to do this feat, and this might be something that I'm going to choose to skip, then I'm going to probably do it with the Treya Cheese against a Geo node. The good news is because it's a global, I can do that in any sector, and I'm not going to have to worry about finding a Geo node in one specific sector. So, with all of that said, we do also have the elephant in the room, which is the boss nodes. We don't know what the bosses are. I don't know what they're going to look like. I only know what the feats are. Typically, you have content creators like Bit Dynasty and Celiac Sarah who are going to put out conquest guides as they progress through conquest. They're probably going to be your sources for those boss battles. I don't like to speculate. What I do like to say is that Lord Vader is one of the teams that I use, especially if I have to do things with just dark side. JML or JMK if I have to do things with light side. And I really like my Jabba and Leia teams if there's a no Sith, Jedi, Ufu modifier there. If there is a no GL modifier, General Grievous usually puts in some work. Bad Batch can sometimes put in some work. We'll see what happens. I typically worry about those last, and I brute force them with whatever free consumables I get from the reward track. Now, with all of that said, if you found this helpful, but you're still lacking in the options, we do have our Discord community. There's roughly 1,500 people there. They are very helpful. We have our Conquest channels. We have Kazgul from Reddit there, who is like I don't know why he likes Conquest as much as he does. But the point is that we do have people that can help you with your Conquest, more specifically based on your .gg account. We finally have our Brunch with Egnards mugs. The link will be in the comments somewhere there if you want to get one for Sunday mornings. And if you have any other questions, you know that I am available on Discord. I do answer all my PMs as best as possible, but understand that there are a lot of people that are messaging me at all times, so it does sometimes take a little bit. With all that said, good luck in this upcoming conquest, and peace out.